The week started as the previous had ended, with a violent attack. After Nice and a string of attacks in Germany, it took only until Tuesday for the next one to happen, this time in a small town in the north of France, leaving the European Union in a state of despair. Welcome to the State of the Union. It was short after 9 in the morning when two men entered a church in Saint-Étienne-du-Rouvray in Normandy. They took hostage the believers and brutally slaughtered the local priest, Father Jacques Hamel. It became soon clear that the pair counted themselves as members of the jihadi group ISIL.
The ISIL militant group has released a video of two men it says were those who attacked a church in France on Tuesday. Both are pledging allegiance to the group's leader. The attackers were shot dead by police after taking hostages and killing a priest. One, already named by police, was 19-year-old local Adel Komish, who had twice tried to reach Syria to join ISIL. The second may be a 19-year-old from Savoie in eastern France after an ID card was found at Komish's home. Sister Danielle witnessed the attack in Saint-Étienne-du-Rouvray church. I was very afraid when they came in. The fear when I said to myself, we're going to die. When I saw them coming in, I thought, this is it, this is the end. They were very determined and motivated. You Christians, they said, you're eliminating us. That was the sort of things they were shouting. Residents of the small Normandy town near Rouen have been leaving flowers in tribute to the 86-year-old priest, Father Jacques Hamel, who had his throat cut in the attack. He was well known in the community, and the brutal nature of his death has shocked many.
This time it was not about killing a huge amount of people. Despite the utter violence of the act, it was also the symbol of hitting a Catholic church. Grégoire Laurie sat down with Didier Leroy, a terrorism expert from the Belgian Royal Military Academy.
Is this a sign that a war of religions is underway?
This isn't a religious war that's underway, but it's an attempt to provoke a certain part of France, the Catholic part of France, a part of France that hasn't been targeted yet. This latest case is really targeting Catholic France. Rural France has been struck at its core here. It seems to be an attempt to try to imitate certain battles that are taking place in the Middle East at the moment in Syria and in Iraq.
What's the strategy of the so-called Islamic State group now?
In the last few months, the Islamic State militants have lost a number of battles and thus have lost a significant part of territory in both Syria and Iraq. So this is an attempt to preserve their image of victory, so to say. The group has stepped up attacks abroad in order to maintain its self-importance that contributes to its appeal and helps it attract young recruits from abroad.
In this war against terrorism, are we not experiencing the worst-case scenario right now, considering the recent increase in multiple attacks?
Yes and no. The most feared scenarios would probably be using bacterial or chemical weapons. That would be a real slaughter. I hope we never witness that. However, this is particularly vicious as it concerns hitting places that we don't expect at all. Everyone expects a capital city to be targeted. Then we saw medium-sized cities being hit. Now we're talking about tiny villages. The pace of attacks has increased, but also the geographical area that has to be monitored by police and security forces has expanded. This will exhaust forces and show even more flaws amongst French authorities.
So are we seeing a kind of change in strategy of the Islamic State group in the way it operates in Europe?
Well, we could say the Islamic State adapts to whatever the scenario. The Islamic State is capable of causing a lot of damage, either in terms of absolute numbers of victims or in terms of symbolism, as we see here, with very few resources. The Nice attack happened by leasing a truck, and the latest attack was carried out with knives. It's just so you realize that with very few resources, you can have numerous casualties.
Avec très peu de moyens, on peut frapper soit beaucoup de victimes, soit frapper les esprits en profondeur.
Didier Leroy, merci d'avoir répondu à nos questions.
Merci à vous.
Only one day later, Pope Francis said that the string of recent attacks, including the murder of the priest in France, was proof that the world is at war. However, speaking to reporters on his way to Poland, He said he was not talking about a war of religion, but rather one of domination of peoples and economic interests. It was also the week where the new British Prime Minister Theresa May was touring the continent to discover how other EU leaders see the British plans to leave the European Union. At the same time, her foreign minister went to Paris. He had to meet his counterpart, who only 2 weeks before voiced harsh opinions about Boris Johnson.
The British Foreign Secretary has promised the UK will maintain close ties with its European neighbours despite the Brexit vote. Speaking after talks in Paris with his French counterpart, Boris Johnson said the Entente Cordiale would remain special. Even though the UK has voted to leave the European Union, it doesn't mean that we will be leaving Europe, he said. And we wish to be as close as possible to our allies, most particularly France, over the coming years. Soon after Boris Johnson's surprise appointment as Britain's top diplomat, Jean-Marc Ayrault questioned the credibility of the man who led Britain's Leave EU camp. He said, "You know his style and how he behaved during the campaign. He lied a lot to the British." But the pair had to put aside their differences to at least discuss the fight against Islamic extremism.
This week it was also announced whom Boris Johnson and the other British ministers in charge of Brexit will have to face on the side of the European Commission. It'll be Michel Barnier. He is a former French foreign minister and a former EU commissioner for the internal market, which is one of the topics on which the negotiations with the UK will be tough. British tabloids reacted with outrage at the nomination by the Commission. Hard to think of a more anti-British figure. A declaration of war, wrote Tom Newton-Dunn, the political editor of the Sun newspaper, on Twitter. And let's see what's on the agenda for the next weeks. On Friday the 5th, the Olympic Games start in Brazil, with many Russian athletes excluded for doping. In the beginning of the following week, Russian President Vladimir Putin will host his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Both countries are warming up their relations after a tense period. The move is seen with suspicion by NATO. And on Monday, 22nd of August, French President François Hollande has invited the heads of the German and the Italian governments, Angela Merkel and Matteo Renzi. They will have a full agenda. The State of the Union goes on summer holidays. We'll be back on the last weekend of August. Thanks for watching. Have an excellent summer.